Do you know your constitutional rights? Our founding fathers died to give every American citizen freedom of speech, due process, freedom of assembly, and the freedom to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. Rise, stand tall, be bold, and be grateful for your American heritage. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave, where everything is possible. And we are the people. Welcome to We the People. Today we have Visa Serve on. David Nachman is one of the managing attorneys at Visa Serve. He has over 30 years experience in corporate and business immigration, nationality law. Mr. Nachman is a member of the New Jersey Bar, the U.S. Court of International Trade, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. And we also have Ludka Zimovcak on, the managing attorney at NPZ, National Visa Serve, and she has over 15 years specializing in a wide range of complex immigration matters, including non-immigrant visas, labor certification applications, employment-based and self-sponsored immigration petitions, and family-sponsored immigration petitions. She is admitted to practice law in New York and Slovakia. Welcome, David. Welcome, Ludka.
Thanks so much.
Great. Well, glad to have you both on. We have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to dive right into the questions. We've got some great information for our viewers today, so make sure everybody stays tuned until the very end. And this is a two-part series, so we've got another episode coming up right after this. All right, so my first question for you is, what initiatives have been announced about worksite enforcement by the Biden administration, and is ICE still using audit notification for IN forms?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Geetha. And this is, an area of particular interest to our firm, as we do represent a large number of employers throughout the United States who all of them are required to do I-9 forms. I-9 forms are employment authorization verifications. And so when an individual comes to work for an organization, they have to fill out an I-9 form. And it has always been and continues to be an effort by the government to ensure that individuals who go to work for organizations are properly work authorized. And during the Trump administration, we saw a tremendous amount of very rigid enforcement of the I-9 forms. The Immigration Customs Enforcement was going out there actively and auditing employers' records. And the Biden administration seems to have eased up quite a bit. And Alex Mayorkas has made an announcement that the focus is not really so much on employers who are making paperwork violations, documenting things improperly, but they're really focusing on public safety and ensuring also that egregious employers are not abusing employees. So it's almost like we went 180 degrees. And it's kind of interesting to see also that there's a memorandum that was recently put out by the Immigration Customs Enforcement Office to say that they're going to be stopping these large raids. They were very concerned about these large raids where people were coming in, where the government was coming in and taking people away. And when the kids come home from school, there's no one there to tend to the kids. So, so they're stopping the wholesale raids, but at the same time, they're also, again, concerned, and they want to make sure that public safety is in the forefront. And so Ludka and I are very much focused on making sure that employers are doing the right thing, doing the I-9 forms, and also doing them within the COVID accommodations that have been afforded by the government until December 31st, where there have been proximity accommodations so that you don't have to be face to face. So we're helping employers to comply with these nuances.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And that's a great answer. Speaking of the COVID vaccine now, is that required for all foreign nationals?
So Geetha, it depends whether it's for non-immigrants or immigrants. So immigrants are those that are applying for the green card. So those that are in the United States or outside of the United States applying for immigrant visa. So as of October, it is required. So they have to have a COVID vaccine. Of course, there are exemptions. They can apply for religious type of waiver, or of course, if they cannot have vaccine because of medical issues. But generally speaking, yes. As far as the non-immigrants, those that are entering with visa, as of November, they will be required to have vaccine as well. But that's
Okay,
just
so
coming up.
the non-immigrants cannot get an exception. or
Well,
exemption.
we are yet to see what the details will be. So it should be announced beginning of November. I'm sure there are going to be exemptions.
Got it. Okay, sounds fair. All right, so how does a foreign national bring a new company to the US, and has anything changed since Biden-Harris has taken office?
Wow, so that actually probably could consume a whole hour of discussion. But both Ludka and I handle the transfer of multinational executives to the United States, which usually entails moving a company, oftentimes moving a company's footprint, if you will, from their country to the United States. And it's done in a way that obviously helps the economic infrastructure of our country. So Ludka, maybe we should discuss a little bit about the L first, and then we can also talk about the E. So Ludka, well, if you're talking to a client, what would you tell them about the L?
So first, I always check if there is any foreign company. If there is a foreign organization and they are planning to bring a new company, that's a new company L1A visa. So it's a perfect solution. And for those that already have subsidiary or branch in the US, they can just transfer individuals in L1A as a managers or L1B as someone with a specialized knowledge. So the key requirement here is that these employees have been working for the foreign organization for 1 full year, but it's a really great option for those having already foreign company. And then David, the second one
Right,
is
and then there, right,
E2.
exactly. And then there's the E's. The E visas are interesting. The E visas are treaty trader or treaty investor visas. And basically those are E1s and E2s. And those are designated under treaties between the United States and certain foreign countries. So what Ludka and I would do is we would take a look at where the individual is from, check what kind of passport they carry, and they may be able to qualify as treaty investors or treaty traders. That allows them to come and either open up their own business and invest money in that business and run that business in the United States, which would be E2, or on the other side, the E1s, which are treaties of trade and navigation between the United States and the foreign country, allows an individual to come as an essential worker or a manager and to run an already existing business that's doing substantial trade between the foreign country and the United States. And the way it comes into play, for example, would be if we're talking to an Indian client, for example, an Indian client does not necessarily qualify for an E1 or E2 because there's no treaty between the United States and India. However, if they've immigrated already to Canada and they have a Canadian passport, or they've immigrated to Australia or New Zealand and have passports from those countries, then that opens the door to the opportunity for them to come to the United States and bring that foreign business or to bring their particular business to the United States. So, so again, it's all about adding to our nation's economic infrastructure and allowing people to come and to grow their business, hopefully hiring US workers. That's the ultimate goal.
Okay, so from Canada and all these countries, you're saying that they can then open a business in the United States under the E2. Okay. All right. So are there any viable prospect for individuals in the United States who are out of status to be able to obtain status by a way of new laws or congressional mandates?
Wow, great question. And especially with what's going on right now in Congress. And, you know, we've always talked about this, Gita and Ludka. We always say that what immigration is a political football. And it really has been a political, I guess that's kind of funny because it's football season right now. And that's exactly what Congress is doing, you know, on Capitol Hill with they're bandying about the possibility of some type of immigration reform. And right now they're talking about possibly subsuming it within this $3.5 billion this new reconciliation bill that they're talking about. And unfortunately, the first attempts to get an amnesty or some type of a program in place have failed, unfortunately, but they're still trying to do some workarounds. And a lot of these new programs were subsumed within the Citizenship Act of 2021, which Biden, I think on day one when he came into office, talked about the possibility of putting in something that would be workable for the folks who are in the United States who didn't have status. So like one of the programs that we know about was the Daca program. The Daca program was an Obama program for the Dreamers, deferred action for childhood arrivals. That's one program that it obviously received a lot of, it was in the limelight from the Supreme Court, and then it was kicked back for regulatory focus. And now the regulations are sort of out there. So we're just waiting to see what sort of new life is going to be breathed into the DACA program. And Ludka, what other types of programs?
The TPS, David. So we've
Yes,
seen,
absolutely.
we were worried there's going to be end to TPS, which is temporary protected status.
Mhm.
And luckily, we are back with TPS with a lot of countries. Many countries were added as well. So that's a good program for those that are out of status. We still have U Visa, and U Visa is great. So that would serve for those that have no status.
That's for victims of certain crimes, right?
Correct.
So if an individual is in the United States and doesn't have status, that allows that person, if they're a victim of a crime or they're working with law enforcement to root out the evils of the world, they could potentially apply for U visas. And I think that there was a recent change in the U visa regulations, which was really it was addressed actually recently by the USCIS in a in one of their teleconferences. And one of the things that now they allow is if it was a bona fide filing, the individual can get a work authorization card, which allows
and why
them.
is it important, David? Because it's just taking forever. Gita, it takes about 5 years or longer to get the U visa. So it is important to get
Exactly.
the
And the problem is also that the U visa, unfortunately, there are only 10,000 of them available each year. So part of this new bill that Citizenship Act of 2021 talked about the possibility of expanding the number of visas that would be available under the U visa classification. So really, I guess the total view, the 20,000-foot view of what's going on is that the Biden-Harris administration is potentially looking at other humanitarian fixes to allow individuals who are here in the United States to be able to get some form of status or some form of work authorization, right?
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Thank you. So let's talk a moment for the situation at the US embassies abroad. Are non-immigrant and immigrant visas being issued?
So they are issued, but it's very backlogged. So they have not, as of March 2020, they've been not issuing many visas, just emergency. So it's a huge backlog. So as far as the immigrants, those future green card holders, there is some type of priority system. So there is a priority given right now to adoptions, obviously the kids coming to the United States, immediate family members, so US spouses of US citizens and minor kids. Those are the priorities, but still, people are going to be waiting months and months to get their interview date. So that's not that great. As far as the non-immigrant visas, again, it's very difficult to get appointment. The only positive thing about non-immigrant visas is that there is something called interview waiver where the person does not have to show up for the in-person interview, but they can just submit the passport and they would be able to get the visa, assuming that they're applying for the same visa that expired within 48 months. So that's great news. And for students, it's a little bit different. So if they held any type of visa, they actually would be able to benefit from that interview waiver, which is great because they would be able to do it just by submitting the passport to the consulate.
Yeah, the crazy thing, Geeta, about what was going on at the consulates is that a lot of the staff were just brought back stateside. And so now, they're not working with full staff. and they're working with overloaded cases, like Ludka was saying. So they're just digging out of tremendous backlogs. So yeah, it's happening at the consulates, but it's happening at a very, very slow pace.
I would recommend to maybe, if someone has emergency and it's an immigrant visa, for example, we've been successful, try to file an expedite request. So if there is certain medical issue, or I recently had a case where there was a minor child involved, stuck abroad, it's always good to ask for an expedite request with the National Visa Center, and pretty much they'll grant it if there is a good reason.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay. Now, what are the Biden administration's immigration policies and what was executed and what was not in 2021?
Wow.
That's a big question.
Yeah, there was quite a bit going on. And I think that Ludka and I do very frequent speaking engagements for academic institutions across the country. And I think that we always start out by saying, so far, since the Biden administration has come in, we've heard nothing but good news, at least with regard to everything except on the southern border. So,
Muslim ban, one of the first thing was the
very
Muslim
important.
ban was revoked. DED was reinstated for Liberia. DED stands for Deferred Enforced Departure.
Departure, right.
DED.
Yep.
We talked about TPS, we talked about DACA.
Right. And there were a couple of smaller things which were super important. Like one of the things that the Trump administration was trying to do was trying to eliminate the DS, duration of stay, for students. So FM and J students were quaking in their boots that their DS was going to be taken away, which meant that if they finished their program and didn't leave, they would start to accrue unlawful presence. And so the fact, I think that what the Biden-Harris administration did was they actually said, no, DS stays. And that was really good news for the students, right?
Then there was a memo reinstating the old policy regarding extensions. I think that's a huge one. So we've seen, and we've been always talking about it, a lot of denials of H1B extensions, O1 extensions, different, extensions. And now we are reverting back to the old policy where the officer will give deference to prior determination. And pretty much unless there is, some major material change or fraud, they will grant an extension. So that's definitely welcome and positive news.
And that deference is really, really important because it was so frustrating for us as immigration lawyers submitting petitions, which we already had adjudicated favorably, and then they were re-questioning everything. So it was a tremendous hurdle for us to have to re-argue things that we had already resolved favorably. And I think one of the other things, which Ludka, I think you would also agree, which is a big, big plus from the Biden-Harris administration, which was the priorities memo. Dealing with giving ICE officers and other adjudicatory individuals opportunities to utilize their discretion to exercise priorities being that they should go after people who are detrimental to our nation's safety, and not to be looking at people who are here caring for the elderly, people who are former military, who might be out of status, folks, other priorities.
Women.
Yeah, exactly. So what we had going on under the Trump administration was a focus on things that were issues that were not important. And now hopefully they have an opportunity to focus on what's truly important. National security is probably the most prominent and important issue for the Department of Homeland Security.
Right. And right now there's no southern border. So I mean, that's a big problem, right? The invasion and all that. Okay, so well, we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap up. And it's something that you already touched on. So is there going to be a new H1B lottery based on wage next season?
So we do have new lottery program for the past 2 years, so that works well. And as far as the wage, it's not going to happen. So this is great news for everyone trying to apply for H1B because it was a bit of a scare. but it's not going to happen.
Right. So Geetha, basically what that was is that at the end of the Trump administration, there was a proposal for the H1Bs to be for there to be a lottery on all the levels and priorities given to a higher level salary. So they were going to basically say, okay, wage level ones and run a lottery, wage level two, run a lottery, wage level three. But the thing is that by the time wage level one lottery was done, that maybe 25% of wage level two was going to get in, and then very, very little of wage level three and like none. So, or vice versa, actually going up. But bottom line is that, you know, the Biden administration said, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
So that was tremendous that they decided that that was not going to come online.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, yeah, let's wrap up here. Are there any more comments before we close up and go to part two? Anything you forgot to add to any of the questions?
I just wanted to thank you very much for inviting us on, because it's always great to be able to share this information with your viewership.
Absolutely, and I'm sure my viewership is benefiting tremendously from all of this great information. So thank you both, and we will call it a wrap, and make sure viewers subscribe to my YouTube channel to catch us next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Geetha.
Thanks.